Welcome to episode 119 of the G2 on 5G. It's the latest inside scoop on everything 5G. We cover 6 topics in about 20 minutes, and it's brought to you by More Insights and Strategy. I'm Will Townsend, and joining me again this week is fellow analyst Anshel Sag. Let's get started. So my first topic is around Mobile World Congress Americas. So I attended this week for 2 days, and from a theme perspective, there was a lot of discussion around private networking, Open RAN, and millimeter wave. And in fact, the millimeter wave breakout session, was the largest attended session. So obviously, there's a lot of focus now being directed there, and the applications. We've talked about the applications for millimeter wave on prior podcasts around venues and that sort of thing. But I'd like to share. I had 2 great panel experiences at the event. One was with the Besson Group. And so the Besson Group is focused on providing tools to businesses that are scoping and planning private networking deployments. I mean, oftentimes, a lot of companies don't know where to start. And so that was a great panel discussion. FirstNet was on the panel. I was on the panel. Alex Besson, who's the principal of the Besson Group, was on the panel. And we really talked about verticals, applications, use cases, and that sort of thing. There isn't a recording of that session, but I did share some insights on Twitter. So go check that out. The other activity I participated in was with T-Mobile. And so I served as a judge for their inaugural unconventional awards. And what we did, myself and 3 other judges, prior to the event, there was a website that companies could submit their applications for nomination. There were 3 categories: business and employee enablement, and a third, which escapes me, but I've shared all of this detail on my social media channels. But it was fantastic. We had a panel during the day. We were talking about how 5G and other technologies are being leveraged to really do transformative things, and that was really a nice setup for the event. And we awarded 3 winners. And what I found really interesting about all 3 of the participants that won first place, Morehouse College in particular, that's actually Martin Luther King Jr.'s alma mater. We awarded them, and you'll like this. We awarded them first place because they're leveraging T-Mobile 5G within a metaverse university curriculum. And they're actually teaching and lining out degree plans that provide skills to people to participate in the metaverse. And that's certainly an esoteric concept. I know you've talked about it because you focus on mixed reality. But what I really like about what they were doing with it is, very practically using virtual reality to make a more immersive online learning experience. And what's also great about that is, bringing more of a on-campus experience and being able to extend that to a greater number of people, and potentially do that more cost effectively, because not everyone can afford tuition. I'm putting my second daughter through college, and it's about $5,000 a semester, not including room and board. But at the end of the day, it was a fantastic week for me, and I shared a lot of details on my Twitter feed and my LinkedIn feed. I know you weren't there, but did you catch any of the news?
Yes, well, some of my topics are actually going to be about the news.
Oh, good.
I'll kind of just let us transition into that, because my next topic is actually an announcement from Verizon about this.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I've got my third topic will be something that was announced at the show too. But so with that, let's let you take it over. And you want to talk about Razer, or you want to talk about Verizon first?
Well, actually, the Razer Edge 5G was announced by Verizon at
Okay.
MWC 2022 Americas. Actually, one of their PR guys was the person who tweeted it out,
Mhm.
and then everybody picked it up. So my understanding is this is the updated, modified version of the Razer device that they had built, that Qualcomm had built with Razer and announced late last year as a
Mhm.
development device. And I think this is obviously a much more consumer-focused version of that. So I think isn't necessarily the same device, but it
Yeah.
is running the same G3X chipset. and it does have 5G connectivity. And Razer will be giving a full reveal of this device on October 15th. But what's really interesting is this device follows another Qualcomm-based device that's not 5G connected, made by Logitech in partnership with Tencent, which I believe the next gen will probably have 5G, if you ask me.
Yeah.
But in general, this is like a pretty big deal because a lot of people are very excited about handhelds, and with the Switch and the Steam Deck both doing really well. So I think this is a really interesting announcement, and it was you know interesting timing, since there's a real full blown announcement coming, but I think Verizon kind of wanted to get ahead of it and
Yeah.
talk about the 5G connectivity side of things. And honestly, I'm hoping that I can get my hands on one so I can kind of experience a fully dedicated 5G gaming handheld, because there isn't one today, and this is probably going to be the first one.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. And you shared some updates on the Google platform, right, as well.
Oh yeah, so I Stadia is being shut down.
Yeah.
So that will impact some people's ability to do 5G gaming over the cloud. But I actually think that Stadia will live on as a white label service for ISPs like AT&T that are already doing that, and
Yeah.
other game developers that want to have cloud streaming capabilities to compete with what Microsoft and Sony have.
Right. So the platform would remain in place, but obviously the hardware is going away, right?
I would say I think the hardware will still be there because
Okay.
the only hardware you really needed was a Google Chromecast. So
Yeah.
I think the GPUs will still stay in the data center. They'll just have a different, platform that they technically run on, but it's still going to be Stadia with a new name or no name.
Okay. Interesting. Well, I'm going to save my Mobile World Congress announcement towards the end, but I want to talk about T-Mobile. So this is a very magenta podcast today. But T-Mobile this week, it was in a light reading article, revised its fixed wireless access subscriber targets. So originally they had communicated they felt like they could get to like 9.5 million subs by 2025. So they've revised that back to 8 million. And so it got me thinking, what's going on here? Have they been too bullish? And then also, how does their FWA service sort of impact what they're doing from a mobile standpoint? So within the article, they were talking about how I think now T-Mobile recognizes that when they get to that level of subscribers, and so right now they're probably at about 1.5 million or so, but when they get there, the one thing they have to be very, very cognizant of is managing that the bandwidth of spectrum, right? So that the FWA services don't choke out the mobility users, right? So for the first time, I in this article, I'm seeing that T-Mobile understands that, and that they're going to be sort of factoring for that and future build out plans to make sure that they can deliver a very, very robust fixed wireless access service while not cratering its mobility service. So any thoughts?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting development because I think there are definitely some people out there that have been kind of, waving the red flag on that,
Yeah.
in terms of capacity.
Well,
But also,
their competitors have big time, right?
yeah, but also their competitors don't have as much spectrum.
Right.
So, they don't really have the ability to even do this if they wanted to.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think long term, T-Mobile is going to try to bifurcate, and they're kind of already doing this, bifurcate their customers based on unlimited users
Yeah.
and users that have data caps. And I think that's a good way for them to be able to limit usage of the network and utilization. But honestly, I think the big problem I see for at-home internet use in general is like TV streaming.
Yeah.
Um, because if they can solve that problem, I think they can serve a lot more users because most internet traffic is inherently bursty, except for streaming TV services. And
Right.
even then, if you look at like how it's done, it's usually done in big chunks, and then it's kind of like big bursty chunks if you watch your little progress bar.
Yeah.
So I think that this is just going to be another problem that they need to solve, and they've got some time to figure it out.
Hmm.
But overall, I think that fixed wireless access is creating a disruption in the market to the point where their competitors are going to have to reconsider, how they offer their internet services and what kinds of deals they offer. And I,
Hmm.
I just think it's a net positive for everybody. But you're right. I do think it's interesting to see that they're revising a little bit um,
Yeah.
within maybe reality.
Yeah. No. So it was probably a long time coming. So, but let's move to your second topic. And you're talking a lot about Verizon today, but you want to talk about a partnership between Verizon and Lockheed.
Yeah, so Verizon and Lockheed have previously announced their 5G military platform, which is called 5G.MIL or 5G.mil.
Hmm.
And they've been working together a lot on 5G enabled use cases. And they recently revealed that they worked together to use 4 5G enabled drones to capture and transfer intelligence surveillance and reconnaissance, also known as ISR,
Hmm.
data from aircraft in flight and use it to geolocate military targets. And this is really interesting because I literally just yesterday watched a video of a Ukrainian drone flying over a target while Ukrainian fighter jets flew over the target and bombed it.
Huh.
And that kind of sparked my thought about like this platform and where you can use drones as scouts and
Right.
to give you real-time data, right? Because what ends up happening in a lot of military situations is you get data on where your enemy is, but it can be outdated if they're moving. But if
Yeah.
your drone is constantly tracking them, or if you have a drone that can track them, it really changes how you're able to fight war.
Yeah.
That said, 5G would be dependent on being able to have connectivity in the country you're in if it's
Hmm.
not your home turf.
Right.
And a security thing if your 5G networks aren't down. So that's something to consider as well. I think they were using millimeter wave here
Yeah.
to do this communication. So it's probably a very much point to point line of sight kind of application for 5G.
Yeah.
Um, but they actually did two different applications. The first involved transmitting real time ISR, RF, and streaming data over 5G millimeter wave. And then the other was to use the advanced signal processing algorithms to process that data at the network edge and display it in a live stream video feed. So
Hmm.
um, I'm not really sure I would call that two applications. I would call that one end and the other end of the application.
Yeah.
Um, but it is really interesting to see that there are more compelling 5G applications within defense to enable more effective fighting force.
Yeah, and I'm not a military armament expert, but I know GPS factors into a lot of missile guidance systems and that sort of thing. And I'm hesitant to say that this is a killer 5G use case or or application, but we've talked about the military applications with 5G, and it's quite compelling. And I think also eventually, for theaters of war, heaven forbid, you'll see the ability for the military to bring in mobile, cell towers and that sort of thing, and mobile infrastructure to set up pop-up networks, because that's one of the use cases today with 5G and LTE, is that you can do these pop-up networks for like construction sites and that sort of thing. So
I was gonna
yeah, but
say
what's
the
that?
only I, I know this is punny, but any military 5G application is technically a killer app 5G application.
That's a good point. So
I thought you were making the joke. I didn't think you realized you had made it.
I no, I made it, but I'm a little tired from Mobile World Congress, so my delivery was a little off there. So, but let's go to my third and final topic this week. So I want to talk about NTT. They had a big announcement at Mobile World Congress Americas around their plans to help the city of Las Vegas deploy the largest private 5G network. And it's basically they're claiming it's the largest municipal CBRS deployment. Kelowna is also involved, and I think I've connected the dots on this one before. NTT is actually they have an equity interest in Kelowna, as do a few other companies as well. And Kelowna, one is, Kelowna does a couple of things. So they're sort of a private network in a box. They provide a radio core, and all of the software to manage that. So Kelowna's their control, basically their control console is a part of this solution as well. And I thought the applications were interesting because initially when you think of smart city, you think about, first responder and, like traffic management, that sort of thing. And certainly that's part of it. But there are some applications like for the Clark County School District to support remote learning and also telehealth services. So, Las Vegas is an interesting place. I mean, it's sort of a boomtown right now. I mean, there's a new casino built, it seems like every year. But we've talked about Las Vegas in the past, and we've also talked about Halo, that autonomous kind of fractional, kind of rental car service where someone remotely pilots the vehicle to you, and then once the vehicle is delivered, then you get in, and of course it's not autonomously piloted at that point, but you get in and you drive away. So, and that's leveraging T-Mobile's quite extensive 5G network deployment in the city of Las Vegas. So, but this is CBRS, so it's a little bit different. It's different spectrum, but boy, I mean, Las Vegas is becoming a real showcase for private networking. So, what are your thoughts?
Well, I would also say that there's a lot of industries in Las Vegas that would benefit from private networking.
Yeah.
I also think that Las Vegas is a great city for doing any kind of cellular deployment because it's flat.
Yeah.
Because it's surrounded by mountains.
Yeah.
But Vegas itself, like, is incredibly flat. So I think it's probably, a great environment for deploying wireless technologies. If you remember, I think Vegas was the first, if not one of the first WiMAX cities as well.
It was. Yeah.
So I just think that it's good that Las Vegas as a city is enabling this. And that's good on their government to, enable new use cases. But I would also say that I think there's a lot of money flowing through Vegas, and there's definitely a lot of applications where a small improvement to connectivity or, a small technology upgrade could yield millions of dollars and pay for itself, within a year or two.
Yeah. That's an interesting observation. I didn't really think about that, about just the topography of the city lends itself to being, there's really no, kind of propagation, challenges there, especially in low band and mid band. Yeah. And then when you think about the fact that, besides Orlando, Las Vegas is like definitely the number one, spot for big events and conventions, just given the infrastructure that's there. But what another fantastic way to expose a lot of people to the power of 5G as well. So I think all of that in combination, and like to your point, they're able to build those multi-billion-dollar casinos in the middle of a desert. Money is no object either. So that all sort of comes together nicely there. But so let's move to your third and final topic. And I want to weigh in on this as well, because I spent time with Mishka Dagan, that does manage 5G strategy for T-Mobile for Business. But I'll let you take it away. So they announced some vertical industry solutions to support their prior private networking announcement.
Yeah, so basically as a component of its fairly new 5G advanced network solutions business, T-Mobile announced its advanced industry solutions. So this is kind of like taking a lot of the components of what's in the advanced network solutions and building, to your point, vertically focused complete solutions that are designed to make different businesses lives easier with when it comes to connectivity.
Yeah.
And they highlighted 4 industries, but there's going to be a lot more applications from what it seems like.
Yeah.
And they're winding in a ton of partners in this
Mhm.
as well. So this is not all just T-Mobile and connectivity. It's services, it's support,
Yeah.
it's hardware, it's devices, it's connectivity, it's all of it all at once. And this is, I think, a way for T-Mobile to show that it is a leader in the space in not just providing the connectivity, but showing people how to use it.
Yeah.
And I think offering these services and these advanced industry solutions will, I think, theoretically help uptake, which is why I think it exists. And they don't want to necessarily say, "Here's 5G." They want to say, "Here's a whole suite of things that we think can help your business that
Right.
involve using 5G and increase our ability to add new customers." But I'll make a quick round of the big four. They've got retail, manufacturing, logistics, and municipalities.
Yeah.
So they're talking about different companies that they're able to take as partners. So in the retail space, they have Retail Light, which is an analytics company.
Hmm.
And then in manufacturing, they have AR, and that's from a company called Tactile, which I think we've talked about before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I actually know I've heard of them before, and they are an AR enterprise company. And there's logistics from companies like Geotab, and then there's municipalities, which they didn't have a specific partner there, but
Yeah.
clearly they're partnering with experts in these different spaces and pairing it with their connectivity and finding the right devices and creating solutions so that when there is a company that comes to T-Mobile
Yeah.
and says they're interested in 5G, they don't just say we've got 5G for you. Well, we've got like a whole suite of things that you can look at.
Yeah, no, and it's really compelling. And as I mentioned before, I spent time with Mishka Dagan, and we talked about these. And so the municipality, that's obviously smart city use cases. But
Mhm.
what I really like about this strategy is that, and I tweeted something out to this effect, that IoT is really becoming, I see that becoming T-Mobile's on-ramp into being a legitimate enterprise service provider. And they've had several wins there. But what I like about this announcement is that it's taking its 5G footprint, it's bringing IoT into that, and then what they are doing for these 4 verticals is they're taking a best of breed approach to your point, and they're aligning, and it's so they're taking the guesswork out of it. So I recall Mishka telling me that sort of across the 4 verticals, there are about 35 partners that are involved. And so they're leaning heavily into their TIoT initiative, which is a global initiative. They're obviously FWA is going to be a part of these solutions as well. And if you recall, their advanced network solution launch earlier this year really kind of spoke to what they're doing to deliver public, private, and hybrid connectivity, because one size does not fit all here. So I think at the end of the day, boy, within the last 2 years, T-Mobile has made a lot of progress and really kind of ramping itself into the enterprise services space. This is an area that they were not really focused on. I've spoken to this in the past. Sprint brought a lot of business acumen to the relationship. T-Mobile for many years was just very consumer disruptive focus, but now T-Mobile for Business is really sort of amping it up. And that award ceremony and that panel that I participated on this week, that was also one of the objectives there, was to call attention to what T-Mobile for Business is doing here. And Callie Field is the president of T-Mobile for Business, and I got to meet her for the first time, spend time with her. She was on my delayed flight as well, and she's got a very very grand vision for where she wants to take things, but it's baby steps, right? And so I think this is just a solid announcement, and I think at the end of the day, it'll provide a lot of momentum for T-Mobile here. But hey, buddy, it's been another great podcast this week. We're a little late based on my travel delay on Friday coming back from Vegas, but why don't you take us home?
Absolutely. We hope our viewers and listeners found this week's topics interesting. If anyone out there would like to provide insights for a specific 5G topic for a future podcast, please reach out to us on social media. Will is at Willtown Tech, and I'm at Anshel. We hope you have a great weekend, and please tune in again next week.